For centuries, the bloodlines that built civilizations were quietly stripped from the record, not lost, removed, altered documents, erased lineages, names buried under empires that needed you to forget where you came from. But certain traits survive. Certain signs carried in your face, your instincts, your very blood refuse to disappear. And by the time this ends, you may never look at your family the same way again. Before we uncover the 6 signs, comment where you are watching from and subscribe. Ancient bloodlines did not vanish, they were buried. For most of recorded history, the groups who controlled the pen also controlled the story. Empires rose, conquered, and did what every conquering force eventually does: they rewrote the past to justify the present. Genealogies were altered. Family names were changed at borders. Languages were outlawed. Entire ethnic identities were reclassified, absorbed, or simply declared to have never existed. The Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Nubian pharaohs, the indigenous nobility of pre-colonial Americas, civilizations that ruled for centuries reduced to footnotes or deleted entirely. This was not chaos, it was policy. The machinery of erasure was methodical. Census records omitted certain groups by design. Church registries listed conquerors' languages only. Colonial administrators renamed populations to sever them from their own histories. What they could not erase was biology. Because while documents burn and records disappear, the human genome carries a different kind of archive, one that predates every empire, every border, and every institution that ever tried to own the truth about who came before. That archive is in you right now. The subject of this story is not a king, not a pharaoh, not a name carved into stone. It is you. More specifically, your family. The people whose faces you recognize in your own mirror. The grandmother whose cheekbones you inherited. The grandfather whose temper, whose patience, whose particular way of holding silence you somehow carry without ever being taught it. Most people know their family history back 2, maybe 3 generations. A handful of names. A country of origin if they are lucky. A story that usually begins with poverty, migration, or survival and rarely goes further. That is not where your family begins. Geneticists studying ancient migration patterns now estimate that the average living person carries ancestry from at least 12 distinct population groups, many of which no longer exist as recognized civilizations. You are not one thing, you were never one thing. And somewhere inside the ordinary details of your daily life, the way you look, the instincts you cannot explain, the features that seem to skip generations, the older story is still speaking. You just have not been given the language to hear it. So why don't we know? If ancient bloodlines are written into our biology, if the evidence is literally inside every cell of every living person, why do most families have no idea where they actually come from? The answer is not ignorance, it is architecture. The systems built to record human identity were never designed to preserve it. They were designed to control it. Colonial census structures, for example, classified populations by the administrative needs of the empire, not by actual ancestry. If your ancestors did not fit a recognized category, they were reassigned to one that did. Their original identity did not disappear from reality. It disappeared from the record. The same happened through religious conversion campaigns across 3 continents. Families who converted voluntarily or by force were often required to abandon surnames, lineage records, and any documentation connecting them to their pre-conversion ancestry. Generations later, their descendants inherited the new name, the new story, and no map back. This is the wall most family histories run into. Not a dead end, a deliberate door, locked from the outside, by institutions that are no longer here to answer for it. The question is what lies on the other side. The tool that unlocks what institutions erased does not live in any archive. It lives in your mitochondria. Mitochondrial DNA passed virtually unchanged from mother to child across thousands of generations carries what no census, no church registry, no colonial administrator could touch, because it predates every one of them by tens of thousands of years. Unlike the DNA that shuffles and recombines with each new generation, mitochondrial DNA is a direct line, a thread running unbroken from you, backwards through your mother, her mother's mother, all the way to specific ancient population groups that geneticists can now identify with remarkable precision. On the paternal side, the Y chromosome performs the same function, passed from father to son, largely intact, across hundreds of generations. Together, these two biological archives have allowed researchers to reconstruct migration routes, identify lost population groups, and critically confirm ancestries that written records were specifically designed to obscure. This is not ancestry as story. This is ancestry as evidence. And when scientists began applying this method to living populations across the world, 6 specific signs began appearing in families who had no idea what they were carrying. This is where it gets personal. The 6 signs do not announce themselves. They hide inside what you have always assumed was ordinary. Sign 1. Unexplained physical traits that skip generations. A child born with features nobody in the immediate family recognizes. Eye shapes, bone structure, hair texture that appears without warning and disappears again. Geneticists call this deep ancestry resurgence, traits from population groups so ancient they predate your family's known history, surfacing when recessive markers align. It is not random. It is a message. Sign 2. Intuitive knowledge of places you have never visited. Researchers studying ancestral memory have documented consistent cases of individuals experiencing profound, inexplicable familiarity with geographic regions their documented family never inhabited. Not déjà vu, something older, a pull toward landscapes, climates, and cultures that matches with uncanny precision the migration corridors of their deepest genetic ancestry. Sign 3. Rare blood type distributions within your family. Certain blood types cluster almost exclusively within specific ancient population groups. Type B, for example, traces back with unusual density to the ancient Eurasian steppe. Certain rare Rh-negative distributions concentrate in populations with pre-Roman European and North African nobility lineages. But that wasn't all. Sign 4. Hereditary abilities that defy explanation. Musical pitch recognition passed through maternal lines across 12 generations. Mathematical pattern instinct clustering in families tracing back to ancient Mesopotamian scholarly castes. These are not coincidences, they are documented hereditary cognitive signatures. Specific civilizations cultivated specific mental disciplines for centuries. Those disciplines left biological impressions that modern neurogeneticists are only beginning to map. Sign 5. Dreams containing symbols from cultures you were never exposed to. This is the sign most people dismiss. They should not. Jungian research into ancestral archetype transmission, combined with emerging epigenetic studies, suggests that traumatic or significant ancestral experiences can leave chemical markers on DNA markers that influence neural pattern generation during sleep. Families carrying ancient bloodlines report recurring dream symbols that correspond, with documented accuracy, to the iconography of their deep ancestral civilizations. What came alongside Sign 6 was harder to sit with. Sign 6. The feeling that your family was always meant to be more. Not ambition, not ego. Something quieter than that. A persistent, unexplained sense passed from parent to child across generations that the family name once carried a weight the current world no longer recognizes. That something was interrupted. That a chapter was torn out before it could be finished. Psychologists initially dismissed this as cultural nostalgia. Then the genetic data began arriving. Families reporting this specific feeling, this unnamed inheritance of interrupted greatness, were, in statistically significant numbers, tracing back to bloodlines that had experienced deliberate, documented erasure. Noble lineages stripped of land, priestly castes forcibly disbanded, scholarly dynasties whose libraries were burned and whose descendants were reclassified as common laborers within a single generation. They lost everything visible, the titles, the records, the names. But the feeling survived, passed down not as memory because the memory was taken, but as something biology carries when history cannot. Your family's sense of lost greatness is not delusion. It may be the most accurate thing they ever knew. And nobody told them why. Here is what science can tell you. It can trace your mitochondrial haplogroup back 40,000 years. It can place your paternal line within specific ancient population corridors with 90% accuracy. It can confirm, beyond reasonable doubt, that the bloodline running through your family is older, more layered, and more remarkable than any document your government ever issued you. That much the science delivers. Here is what it cannot tell you. It cannot recover the name your ancestor carried before it was changed at a border crossing. It cannot restore the lineage erased from a church registry in a language your family no longer speaks. It cannot return the specific stories, the rituals, the knowledge systems that were deliberately dismantled so that the people who came after would have nothing left to claim. The genome is a map without labels. It shows you the territory. It confirms you were there. But the details, the texture, the meaning, the full human weight of what your bloodline once was, those remain in the silence where the records used to be. And that silence is not emptiness. It is the shape of everything that was taken. You did not arrive here by accident. No one does. Every family carries a history longer than the one they were handed. Every bloodline contains chapters that powerful systems decided the world did not need to read. That decision was never yours to make, and it was never the truth. The 6 signs are not proof of superiority. They are proof of survival, of a lineage that endured erasure, displacement, and deliberate silence and still found its way into you. That is not ordinary. History books are written by those who won, but biology answers to no empire. Your blood has been telling your story for thousands of years. It is time you started listening. If this opened something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. There is much more to uncover. Thank you.